Yo, Pierre, you want to come out here?
NANI? So you want to start a webcomic? It'll be great, they said. No one ever told you how difficult it would be. And as someone who is just starting out, as in I just published my first issue. If you're listening to this, the first few pages have been published already. All the information you need will be in the description below. But I'm here to just share what my initial reaction is to starting a webcomic. A lot of people that I know who have started webcomics, who am I kidding? I don't know anyone who started a webcomic because I'm the first person of all my friends who have ever done this. And I don't really know much about the community. I don't really know much about the people who do it or why they do it. But I'm just here to kind of give you a perspective on why I'm doing it. And hopefully this is something that you can gravitate towards, because I found it very difficult for me to kind of come to terms with what other people's excuse or reason was for starting a comic book, especially a webcomic book. So a little bit about myself and what I'm doing. My comic book is something that I've been writing for about a year, but illustrating for about 6 months. The whole reason behind it was because I genuinely kind of got tired of this stigma about representation in the comic book world, especially in the Marvel DC news that you hear so often about how actors are portraying different races. Sometimes comic book characters aren't being portrayed accurately, and this causes an uproar within the community. As a black male in today's society, I find a lot of the anger and outward push something to reason with, but it's not probably going to be for the reasons you are angry about. That I don't really care what color my superheroes are, because I don't really watch my superheroes for their demographics. I watch them to see their inspiring stories, to learn about what drives them, what motivates them, and how can I relate to them on a social plane, not so much a physical plane. Because no matter how hard I train, I'll never be able to fly or stop a bullet or any of the amazing things that these heroes can do. So I can only hope to instill the morale that they have within myself. I then say to the people who are constantly raging about having misrepresentation on both sides of the comic book aisle, I get that you're looking at the image, but did you get the big picture? And what I mean by that is, are you understanding the true message behind the character? But I also tend to lean towards the fact that I don't enjoy seeing characters who are designed a certain way by their creators and are being represented by a certain way by their creators being changed. As much as we all love Black Panther, you have to remember that the original artist was a white man. It's not a one-off to believe that these characters can't be properly represented. My job is to bring my characters into the sphere in a different light. I design my characters in my image. I design them with a purpose. And granted, there isn't very much representation within the black community for black artists and black comic book illustrators, but that isn't going to change just because I raged about Starfire being black. The only way that I can truly combat a lack of representation for my people within the comic book world is by creating comic book characters who are built in my image. And that is what I'm doing. I'm creating a comic book character. And I'm a firm believer in shit products, because no matter how hard I push this down people's throat on Facebook, no one would follow, no one would watch. Maybe a few people here and there, and of course my number one fan, I love you, mama. But it still goes without saying, I would see people on my timeline debating about racial inequality in the comic book sphere, but none of them would ever click on my comic book and try and support me. And granted, they're not supposed to, or nor do they have to, because my comic book might very well be a shit product, which they don't want to support. And that's something I gotta deal with. But I found out, if I keep pushing and keep forcing myself to do this, eventually I'll gain a crowd. Eventually I'll gain a following. Eventually people will follow, and maybe some people will like what I'm doing here. And that's sort of where I want to let this conversation flow into. If you're going to do a webcomic, you have to do it for yourself first and foremost. Above all else, you need to think about yourself when you're creating your comic book. You're not creating this for money. You're not creating this for your friends. You're not even creating this just to put it out there. You need to be creating your comic book for yourself. If you don't have yourself in mind when you're doing this, it'll be that much easier to quit when the times get rough. So, as you can probably imagine, in today's day and age, it's almost impossible for you to be able to work on a passion project and get paid for it. I only know a few illustrators who are good enough to do this for pay, and even with my middling experience, I'm able to get a few jobs here and there where I'm just basically doing graphic designs for people. But if you truly want to get out there and make yourself be known, this is the best platform to do it. Hopefully you're watching this in the future where I have over 1,000 views on this video, but if I don't have over 1,000 views on this video, I want you to know in the time that it took for me to get 100 views on this video, it took me half the time to get that many people to read my comic book online. So I'm here to tell you, if you're gonna make a webcomic book, don't expect people to follow it right away. But do expect to put in your best effort. Make sure you're working hard on it. Make sure you're doing your best to make sure your comic book is the way you want it to be. Because ultimately, the first person that's going to have to do that is yourself. So you don't enjoy your comic book, I'm here to tell you no one else will. The second thing I would tell you to think about when you're about to start a comic book is don't let the experience overwhelm you. Post it. You'll get better at it. You'll learn how to do it. If you continue to procrastinate and kind of hinder yourself, you'll lose focus of it. Half the reason why I'm starting my comic book is because I'm writing my comic book and I tend to push on forward with drawings and illustrations, but I never finish previous episodes. As I'm talking to you guys today, I finished three issues worth of my comic book, but I haven't put any of the words in because I just like drawing so much that I much rather not be bothered with writing in the story. So if I have something holding me accountable, such as my fans and readers, forcing me to put the words in so that they can read my comic book online, it'll make me be more productive and more constructive when I'm working at my desk. And finally, one of the steeper curves that I've had to learn is using Photoshop and Adobe Suite type applications, because really, to be honest, it's much easier to edit all of this stuff. And Adobe Photoshop almost perfect program for this application for the purpose of webcomics, because when it's all said and done, you post it on there, you have your dimensions set up perfectly, and you just copy, cut, and paste, man. And it's really simple, it's really easy, it's really intuitive. So it's not a steep learning curve, but also as you get better at the editing process, you'll get faster. So you'll be able to get back to your work, and it helps you find little mistakes that you might have made in your artwork that you wouldn't really see unless you were looking at it from a different perspective. So it helps you build on your technique and skill set, and ultimately that's what this is all about for me, pushing myself to really become better at this. My comic book is a beast on its own. Like as far as writing it and coming up with a story, it's not something I take lightly, and it's based on my original point, which is having representation within my community. So I want to make sure that I'm telling the best story possible for the people who are watching my comic book. But like I said, this is sort of like a brief introduction. I do a lot of these videos, but I don't normally talk over them. I just draw over them. But I've been getting a lot of people asking me about why I started my comic book and what are my motivations. I'm here to tell you, I have a great job, so I don't really need the money, and I don't have a lot of time, so I'm kind of slow with my shit. But I do truly enjoy drawing and putting this story out here for people, and just to get someone other than myself and my mom to support this from a standpoint of just posting it is really motivating for me. So I'm always going to keep you guys in mind when I'm doing this, and I'll continue to make some more videos like this where I'm talking over some of my artwork, kind of explaining, you know, what I'm doing or how I'm doing it, you know, normal people shit. But for the meantime and in between time, you guys take care of yourself, enjoy the rest of this artwork, and whatever music I'm putting at the end of this. If you have any music suggestions, leave it in the comment section below. I'll play your music over my videos. That'll be cool, wouldn't it? Shouldn't it? Alright, bye. Oh, like, share, and subscribe. You know, all that good shit, that YouTube shit. And my comic book and everything will be in the description below. Thanks, guys.